My name is Gary Thompson. I am the president of the Executive Council. You are in the right place for the Technology Leaders Roundtable that we are co-hosting with our friends at Couchbase today. As I said a moment ago, Neil Weiss will be here momentarily. He's running from a meeting. The Cleveland Guardians are one of three teams on the American League side with 70 wins, and there's only one with 70 wins on the National League side. But we're thrilled you're here. Absolutely thrilled you're here. So for those that are new to the Executive Council, we are a 20-plus-year-old organization hosting salons either in breakfast, afternoon, or dinner settings around the world in 35-plus cities. We host those conversations across finance, marketing, cybersecurity, and of course, today's session, technology. In addition, we have added into this set of curated conversations around the world a membership offering known quite simply as Exec. And our goal with these sessions is to build better leaders, right? Today, we're going to build better leaders around the topic of technology made possible by our good friends at Couchbase. Exec includes members from across the board, right? Panera Brands, SiriusXM, and others. And if you want to be part of that group, just drop in at exec.org to take a peek at what we do. And with that, Mark, I'm going to bring you and spotlight you and have you say a few words of welcome on behalf of Couchbase. We appreciate making today possible.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I'm honored to be here. Looking forward to speaking with Neil. And thanks to the Exec Council as well for having me. Mark Gamble here. Again, I'm the Director of Product and Solutions Marketing here at Couchbase. And long background in data processing, artificial intelligence as it applies to data processing. Started in field engineering at a database company, went into technical marketing, and now ultimately product marketing. And I absolutely love working with our customers to solve really tough data challenges and build innovative applications. And again, really excited to be here and learn from Neil what the kind of tech is used in their stack at the Guardians organization. I think that's going to be a fascinating conversation.
Well, there are definitely some exciting things going on over there. And I'm noticing a few more guests that have joined us since the top of the hour. And Neil, CTO of the Cleveland Guardians, will be joining us shortly as he runs down a hallway at Progressive Field to join us for this meeting. But that said, Mark, I remember back to one of the first dinners that I co-hosted with you all back in Houston, right? And was with the CIO of the Houston Astros. And, just a long, fun relationship with you guys. And we appreciate you continuing to be a partner of ours at the Executive Council. And I see Neil kind of getting settled, so I'm not going to spotlight him too soon, making sure that he's all comfortable in his spot. But I'm going to bring you in now, Neil. And
sure.
It's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too. Thank you. Apologize for being a few minutes late. Kind of crazy back-to-back day, but I'm here now. So how are you guys doing?
We're great. We appreciate you being here. We have a number of guests that have joined us already, Neil. And I was joking with the audience. A CTO is busy no matter what the season, but you're only one of four teams on either side that's at 70 wins. So a little bit busier too, right?
Yeah, that's actually not the stuff that's keeping me that busy right now. That's kind of on autopilot, but it's always good to be in a great winning position. And we're kind of starting to turn our sights a little bit to what October could look like, knock on wood. So it's better to be winning than losing. So we're excited.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm sure there are a bunch of folks on the baseball operations side that are making sure that what happens down on the field happens the right way as you do what you do behind the scenes. So we're just jumping in here, Neil, and as we talked about in our prep sessions, and you've been gracious with your time in previous sessions with us here at the Executive Council. Just love to have you say a few words of how you got to the Guardian. Well, I guess it was the Indians when you got there, but the Guardians now, and kind of what your role looks like. And then Mark, I'll have you do the same introduction of yourself. So sure. Neil, welcome, my friend.
Sure. Thank you. Happy to be here. So Neil Weiss, this is my 12th season with the Guardians. Started in March of 2013. I'm originally from Boston, went to school in Colorado, worked and traveled internationally for a couple of years, lived and worked in the Bay Area for 18 years, and then I've been here for 11 and a half. So got recruited to, at the time, the Indians by our former president, Mark Shapiro, who was really looking for somebody to help us make our technology be a competitive advantage, right? So we had made a lot of strides on the baseball side, but maybe a little bit less on the business side. So he wanted somebody from outside the baseball industry to come in, different point of view. We're never going to compete with 20 or more teams on Major League payroll, so we have to be better at everything else, and one of those includes technology. So those were my marching orders, and I've been here since then. My role has changed a little bit over time, but the through line for the past 30 years has been tech for me, even though it's probably only about a third or half of what I do right now.
Well, I love how you guys count things in sports, right? It's the number of seasons, not the number of years. And that's
Yep.
true across every sport and every
Yep.
franchise. I love that. And from
Yep.
everything I've read online, with all the articles about you, you've been leaving a pretty significant mark, and we'll dive into that more in a moment. But Mark, again, thanks to Couchbase for making this possible. How did you get to your seat there, and kind of what's your role?
Yeah, so basically, as we were talking earlier, I have a long background in data, basically databases. Started at Informix, and now through a circuitous route through analytics and a couple of CRM applications back at a database company. So kind of coming back to my roots. And Neil, my ears perked up when you said you were in the Bay Area. I grew up in the Bay Area, went to Berkeley High School, and used to skateboard across Cal Berkeley. That was my stomping grounds, and now I'm in the Monterey area. So, I absolutely love working with our database technology and with customers to solve tough problems that they're trying to do, especially around applications that engage customers, engage fans. We have customers that run the gamut of different enterprises, including big league sports. So, really excited to be here and also to hear what Neil's got to say.
Well, appreciate it, Mark, and appreciate you guys making this possible. And, Neil, it's interesting, right? I mean, so much of technology we don't see, right? I mean, the data, the wires, the Wi-Fi, I mean, all the rest of it. But I know, you guys are in the midst of taking progressive field into the 21st century and maintaining that icon. So what's that experience like for you from the tech side as you guys upgrade a iconic 30-year-old stadium?
Yeah, it is really exciting. I mean, our goal, our renovations, which we're halfway through right now. So we launched our first phase of our renovations with opening day this year, and then the second phase will be opening day 25. Our goal has been to make this an asset that maintains its beauty and its infrastructure for at least 50 years, right? We're not in the market of wanting to build a new ballpark. If that were to happen, it would have happened already. You've seen other ballparks of similar ages or even younger already build new. For us, we love this ballpark. Economically, it doesn't really make any sense in Northeast Ohio to build a new ballpark. So we're all about maintaining it, and that's not just about back office type stuff, whether it's concrete or mechanical, electrical, plumbing, technology, but it's also fan-facing areas that change based upon the way that the fans consume our product now, right? Which is different than it used to be, and it'll be different 10 years from now. So I'm lucky enough to participate on all angles of that. I've done a lot of program management on large renovations, so I'm overseeing our renovations right now on our $250 million program, which includes some technology, but it includes everything. And it's got fan-facing areas, it's got back office areas, it's got renovating where our employees work and do everything every day. And it's our clubhouses, right? It has our clubhouses are being touched for the first time in 30 years. They've never been touched before. So we're going from 1994 to 2025 in one fell swoop. So that it's fantastic, it's exciting, and then it allows us to connect with our community quite a bit as well. We have a really good community benefits program that ensures that as we spend this money, that we spend as much of it as possible with diverse suppliers, and that our workforce participation represents what our city and our county and our Northeast Ohio region looks like. So we've really combined all this new stuff, whether it's technology or whatever else, with our commitment to Northeast Ohio and how we work with companies and residents and officials in the area. And it's just been a really great project. It's been really well received in the first phase, and I think the second phase is going to be even better.
Well, and that's true down to your architects. I was reading about that too. You may have a national architecture firm, but both the largest African-American owned architect as well as largest women-owned interior design architect, as part of this journey. So you're,
Yep.
It's so true, right? I mean, it's just a heck of a combination. And having lived in Hudson from third to fifth grade, I still remember one of my first games was to the old ballpark with my dad. So there was a
Yeah.
lot of history, as you talked about the other teams, right? And all the different stadiums, but what's it like on the tech side as a CTO to work with your peers across MLB as well as the league itself? What's that look like, Neil?
Yeah, I mean, I know people use the word collaboration a lot, but it really is highly collaborative. So you got to separate baseball operations from business operations. We don't share anything on the baseball side. Nobody does, justifiably so. It's what you do with technology is a competitive advantage, and you want to be the best at it you can be, and you don't share that with your competitors. On the business side, we share almost everything. So I have a lot of really close friends at different teams. Some I'm closer with than others who I just bounce stuff off of all the time. The vast majority of what I learn and the questions that I ask come from just those people. They don't come from conferences or white papers or training or whatever. It's just, hey, this isn't working for us. Have you solved it? If so, can you tell me? And for the vast majority of the time, the answer is always yes. We share information about data flow, about ticket sales, about marketing, about ballpark services related technology, you name it. And it's something I actually didn't know when I joined 11 and a half years ago, 12 seasons ago. I really had no idea that level of sharing existed. And it's great. I love it because I really hadn't had it in previous organizations and in previous industries. But for the most part, everybody at all the other 29 clubs are willing to share best practices, pitfalls, and we do it for a variety of means. And we get together once a year in person. We have their individual relationships amongst CTOs. We get together more often. We've got a constant, never-ending running Teams chat, which is half like, sitcom and half actual real information. So it's a ton of fun as well. But I have not run into a single person who says, no, I can't help you or give you information from another team when it comes from a business operations standpoint and a technology standpoint. We don't ask about baseball operations, and that's just an unwritten rule, and we know that.
Yeah, well, I love it from the session that we did together, Neil, with Chris Hans, right at the Astros, right? I mean, you guys said the same thing when you were together, which is compete tooth and nail on the field, but behind the scenes, it's collaborative.
Yeah.
In those collaborations and conversations, as well as your own work, Neil, what are the 2 or 3 sort of top of the list things on your mind right now as the real innovations that you're looking at for the team?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, we're going through a long-term strategy process right now. Our strategy analytics team is, I think, I put up against any team, in this industry and probably in some other industries as well. But they're really good at helping facilitate our leaders on looking forward, which we didn't do a great job of, I think, when I joined here. But since then, we're kind of regularly asking ourselves what's important 5 and 10, 15 years from now. And we specifically in Cleveland have to do that because of what I said before. Like, we can't buy our way out from a player standpoint and, spend $200 million in a free agent. That's just never going to happen for the most part. So we've got to look forward at what's better for everything else. So in that process that we're doing right now, we identified a lot of different things, but some examples of those that we're spending a lot of time on are best in class experience in the ballpark, right? So what does that mean 5 and 10 years from now? And what should we be doing now to plan for that, to budget for that, to learn about what kind of projects we want to work on? What kind of research and insights should we be spending our time on to identify how people want to spend their disposable income when they come to our game? How can we operate the ballpark in a sustainable way? Everything from, energy savings to, automation to you name it. And behind all that is technology. Behind a lot of that is technology, not all of it. So, things like getting people in and out of the gates faster, or, food and beverage, right? I mean, everybody on this call has probably been to many baseball or basketball or football or hockey or soccer games or whatever, where you've been frustrated by how long it takes to get your food or your beer. And that's changing rapidly and has been over the past few years. And there's been a lot of really good advancements, but there's still a huge amount of opportunity to make that experience better. I still feel like sometimes when you walk into a baseball park, you're walking back in time for the things you expect to be normal in your everyday life outside of a ballpark that are just slower or more arduous inside the ballpark. So we're asking ourselves, okay, what does a best-in-class ballpark look like in 2027, 2029, 2032? And what technology and infrastructure and operations can we be building out now to get to that place where when people walk into our ballpark in those years, they don't think it's like, it's a baseball game. It's always slower. It's just as good as they would expect it anywhere else.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, we may be far past the days where I had the little sheet of paper with the pencil that my dad taught me how to use to keep track of the balls and strikes and the runs inning by inning, right? Tech has improved a little bit. And, you know, Mark, I know you all at Couchbase are a little bit behind that tech. And what's interesting is it really is the data, right? I'm sure Neil's mining a lot of data too, but what are you seeing kind of across your customer base at Couchbase?
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's fascinating to hear about that. I'm also fascinated with the modernization of progressive field. That's fantastic because that is literally it's a giant edge. And when we think about experiences, digital experiences for fans and customers, it's really about engaging them. And when they're at the edge, that can become actually a challenge. And especially in a giant stadium that might be aging a bit and have some older infrastructure. So modernizing that is really key, and I think engaging customers for our customers is really paramount. And to do that, what they want to do is engage in context, with exactly what the user wants, right when they're asking for it. And that becomes kind of networks can become kind of a barrier when you're talking about that in the context of a giant stadium where, somebody could be, down at the vending or something and not in an area of really solid connectivity. So content is always king when it comes to engagement, but only if, the customers can see it.
Yeah, 100%.
So these type of apps really become sort of the type that require 100% uptime and real-time speed. And that's really what, Couchbase is trying to help solve for our customers. And we've got a lot of really great examples out there of doing just that.
Fascinating stuff, Mark. And, Neil, who'd have thought of a stadium as the ultimate in edge computing, right? Which is an interesting perspective. But I realize in a lot of ways, you're targeting a lot of the tech to when you walk in to have connectivity, but there's almost a fabric of data behind the scenes in the stadium and a fabric of data that you connect out to your fans that are watching on a screen of any sort these days. So what's that piece of your technology decision making look like from a fan-facing perspective? Obviously, starting with, can you get into the stadium quickly?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's interesting because sometimes I think we fall in the trap of putting too much tech forward in the fans' hands, assuming they're going to use it. And so we have to make decisions on what's actually intuitive and useful for what they want to do when they're in the ballpark. I think that's one of the things that I've run into in baseball over the past few years, where everybody does one thing and everybody else jumps on and goes, oh, that's cool, I'll do that too, before they ask what is the problem I'm trying to solve. So one of the things that I'm doing on a regular basis is asking, what is the problem we're trying to solve, right? Does the customer actually want this thing? Just because it's cool tech doesn't mean it's actually necessary. So, one example right now is there is really good technology that's been implemented that the league has supported that several teams are using now called go ahead entry. And you've probably seen it in Philadelphia, and I think Kansas City has it, and Houston may have it, and a few others, where it's facial recognition for entry into the ballpark, right? It took a few years for it to really work, but basically, you just walk in, right? Go ahead entry. You don't stop and scan your ticket. You just walk in and scan your face, and it actually is working pretty well now. And the reason why I bring that up is that, but we're not so sure it's of value for us to spend the time and the money on it, because even though it's cool, our entry process is fast already. So why spend all the money and the time to pick up 3 more seconds or 5 more seconds? Is that the problem that the customer actually wants to be solved versus it takes 11 minutes to get a hot dog? Solve that one once you're already in. But that's an example of like, we're constantly looking at what is our first question is, what does our customer want that's going to encourage them to buy a ticket and come back and, buy merchandise and be a fan and be a loyal fan and have their kids be fans and so on. There are tons of other places in the ballpark where we're having that conversation all the time. I mean, content is king is 100% right. Like what Mark said, we're looking at ways to better use our IPTV system. We just put in a new IPTV system. It's not even all the way in, but the first phase went in the past year, and it really was the first time we had switched out from our legacy RF system from 30 years ago. So, but now we're trying to figure out, okay, with that really cool internet protocol system, what content do people want that's going to help their day be better? whether it's a fan coming in the ballpark and learning about a corporate partner, or wayfinding, or where's the nearest restroom, or what's the score of the other game, or whatever it ends up being, or our baseball operations team, how can they use IPTV better to generate content to push to players in various parts of the ballpark about when the bus leaves, or what food is being delivered today, or what your workout regimen is, et cetera. Or how can we drive revenue from it, right? But all of that, the technology is in now, but it's only as good as the content that's delivered.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if I'm really answering your question here or not, but when I'm asked this question, a lot of times the answer is it's tell me what it is that we're trying to accomplish for the end user before I can get a feel for what the actual technology is used. Because we do have a tendency at time to jump on the next cool thing just because some other team did it. And I'm often the guy who raises my hand and goes, I don't know why we want to do this. And until we can show the business case or the baseball case for it, we should figure that out before we spend the money and the time.
No, I love the way you're thinking about it, Neil. And before you came on, we were talking a little bit about our exec membership offering, and it's a cross-function, cross-industry group, right? Marketing, finance, cybersecurity, technology. Because, like sitting in your own executive suite, you're actually making technology decisions in context with your peers, with the owners, to decide, okay, is this the place to spend, or is this the place to spend? And so when you talk about technology in those settings as you're making strategic decisions, Neil, what does that conversation look like, kind of across your C-suite?
Yeah, we're getting a lot better at that now, right? So when I first started here, it was a fairly siloed environment from a technology standpoint, where the technology people would come up with technology projects, and then the non-technology people would react to them. Or as they got into a project that they had put in a business plan or a budget for a year, they realized there was a technology element halfway through, and then would come to the technology people and say, hey, can you help me? Now, we've actually just kicked off our 2025 business planning and budgeting process, and we've gotten pretty good at just laying out basic concepts across different leaders in the organization, saying, hey, what's important to us this year? Before we scope it, let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish, and does it meet one of our strategic objectives or not? So I know people kind of talk about that all the time, but it's hard to implement it. And I'd say we're good, not great, on implementing it now, but now we're having the conversations long before marketing decides to spin up a new platform for customer relationship management, and then talks to the technology team later on. They're actually sitting down and saying, hey, let's just spend 5 minutes and say, I think I'm trying to solve this problem, that it needs a piece of technology. Can we put it down as a potential 2025 project, then spend some time on scoping it, and then determine whether or not we can afford it and we want to do it in kind of a phased approach like that? So we do that all the time now. And the nice thing about my role too is that I get to do it on both the baseball and the business side as well. So where, baseball has we've developed a much better relationship over the past 10 years, where they say, here's an element of something we want to do to help with drafting a player or developing a player or training a player and so on. And they'll solicit input a lot of times before actually determining what that technology is going to be. But I really think the key in that whole process, and kind of looking across the leadership team or an executive suite, is to have the conversation long before you budget the money and long before you make a decision on who the vendor is. And people have to be brave enough to raise their hand and say, I don't understand what we're trying to accomplish with this. And if that's the case, maybe we shouldn't do it. And that takes a while to get that mentality together, but I think we're pretty close to that place now. It's still a little uncomfortable for people at times. Yeah. But I know personally, I want people to challenge me. If they say, I don't understand what we're going to get from the $800,000, like, how is it going to help us sell a ticket or win a baseball game? If I can't answer that question, I shouldn't be working on the project. I shouldn't be asking to work on that project. And just, it takes getting to that point in time of people willing to ask clarifying questions to get to the point where you're really kind of having a good collaborative conversation.
It's so true, Neil, right? And I remember we hosted a dinner down in Atlanta. CFO for the Falcons was our guest speaker, and he said the same thing you are, right? I may be, responsible for keeping the numbers and reporting correctly and keeping track of all of the Arthur Blank companies, but I'm a strategic advisor with a finance lens. And what I hear you saying, Neil, is sort of the modern technology leader is a strategic advisor with a technology lens.
That's right. Yeah, they're a business partner, right? I mean, gone are the days of a technology leader being the person in the corner office who, just signs vendor bills for, buying $1 million worth of storage and doesn't talk to the marketing person and complains about them, at home. Like those
Yeah.
days are gone, or they should be gone. Uh, just like our general counsel is a business partner, he's not a lawyer who says no, right? His
Right.
job is to provide business partnership advice with a legal lens. And the same thing could be true for strategy analytics, finance, HR, consumer research and insight, marketing, brand, you name it. They all play that role. And that's that kind of I'm a business partner with a lens, fill in the blank what that lens is concept that you just said, Gary, is exactly, I think, how high performing leadership teams work today. And that's how I like to work. I don't ever want to be the guy. I mean, frankly, my hands have been off the keyboard, for about 10 years now. I can't really write a shell script anymore. I don't do any coding anymore. It's been a while. I
Yeah.
don't, I don't configure a route switch. I don't do any of that anymore. I know what it all is, and I could reteach myself to do it if I had to.
Right.
But that's not my job anymore. And my job is to kind of fly at more of 10,000 feet and be a business partner and a facilitator.
100%, 100%. Boy, I always find these half hours go so quickly with great speakers like each of you. So for the folks that may have joined us since the top of the hour, we're having a lovely conversation with Neil Weiss, Chief Technology Officer at Cleveland Guardians, and Mark Gamble from our co-hosts at Couchbase. And at this point in the session, we've all been on enough Zooms or Teams or WebExes that we know where the Q&A box is. So if folks out in the audience want to chime in with a question, feel free to toss it in there and I'll weave it in as appropriate. But, Mark, that infrastructure, right, that Neil's been talking about,
Yeah.
what are you seeing as your customers are making those same sort of strategic decisions? And it seems like it's more of a decision about the data itself, and then you start from there and figuring out how to capture and use it.
Yeah, it really is. And where you process data can have huge implications on the user's experience. And, a lot of people would start with the notion that, hey, we'll just use a cloud database. That's fine. It works great, immense scale. It can integrate, directly with other cloud-based AI, these kinds of things. But when you rely on a cloud-only infrastructure and a cloud-only database, that's where you start to introduce these problems of latency and connectivity issues, availability. And we find, I speak at mobile developer conferences a lot, and I start asking, how are your apps rated in the app stores? Are you getting 5 stars or are you getting 1 star? And if you're suffering low ratings, what's the reason for that? And inevitably, it's not so much because the game is not good or the content's not good. It's because of an unreliable application that fails multiple times or doesn't work when you're on the subway or these kinds of things. And so being able to address and build for that eventuality, the days I think are gone of building with the notion that everybody will have a constant, consistent, reliable, fast connection, and then treating the inability to do this as an error. Those are gone. Now people need to build offline first, I think, and the smart organizations are doing that. Like Neil was talking about, progressive field is undergoing a transformation to enable, I'm guessing, better and faster, more immediate engagement with the fans and even for staff applications that are going on in the park. So really, it's not just get the right database, it's make sure that it can fit in the right architecture for these types of requirements.
Yeah, no, great points there, Mark. And Neil, I mean, clearly, the amount of data that's there and the speed at which you access it, you were joking earlier on, does it sell a ticket? I suppose the question these days with data is, does it sell a ticket at what price? And if it's a Thursday game against the Cubs, is that price different than the other? So walk us through how you're thinking about data there at the Guardians.
Well, data at this point is kind of like air, right? It just is. And so everything we do is based upon some level of data. 10, 15 years ago, it's really just kind of like a marketing term for Salesforce or Oracle to create commercials. But now it's really just, it's the foundation upon which everybody works. And it's not just technology people anymore. I think really good organizations, everybody is data literate, right? So we're not, the only people it's not just the IT team at the Guardians that work with data. Like everybody does to some extent. And so it's a more decentralized view of the way the world works. But for us, we consume as much data as we possibly can if it's relevant whenever possible. I've got a group on my team who's responsible for modeling it, structuring it, making it available for power users to use it to do their jobs. When you talk about what type of data, it really depends upon what the use case is. Data when it comes from a baseball standpoint is totally different when it comes from a business standpoint because they have different needs and the sources are coming from different places. You still run into the same problems you had in the past around cleanliness and usefulness of data, right? There still is a lot of garbage data out there, and you have to determine what's of value for you to use. But I think the biggest change really is the disparate set of end users for who use data now than who did in the past, right? So when we hire people now, I've got to interview something actually at 1:00 for our deputy counsel position. I'm on an interview team. We're hiring a deputy counsel. I fully expect that person, at one of several people I've interviewed already based on their resumes, will be more data literate as a person that got their law degree than I am, who's been a technology professional for 30 years because they've grown up and lived in it. And I wouldn't be surprised if this person can write SQL, right? It's the world we live in now, and it's actually kind of great because it makes things a lot faster.
Yeah.
Now, the quality of the data can still be debatable based upon, where you're getting it from and how resilient it is and so on. But the availability of the data and the amount of people who can do something with it's just a totally different generation than when I grew up in technology. And I don't go through a day, without having some conversation about what's the source of that data? Is it resilient? Do we have enough of it? Do we know what it means? What are we going to do with it? Who's going to act on it? How are you going to visualize it? Like I probably don't go through 4 hours without having a conversation like that right now.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. I'd love you to both weigh in on this because can't go through a session without talking a little bit about AI, right? And we at the Executive Council have done a couple of different road shows in different industries on AI. But the thing that always comes back to, right, which is why I started on the data side, is for all the talk about AI, right? It's not just us as humans now acting on the data. There's actually AI agents acting on the data, that if you don't get that underpinning right, then all these large language models and everything above it, it's the good old fashioned garbage in, garbage out. So I'll throw it open to both of you on this one, on a little bit of a riff on AI and data and what that's looking like.
Sure. I'll take the first
Fire
stab
away,
at it,
Mark.
and then
Yeah.
love to hear what Neil's got to say. And I'll kind of come back to the theme I started with. We find that AI-based application architectures can generally really start out cloud-centric, and it makes a lot of sense, right? The giant LLMs now are provided as cloud services for the most part, and the cloud brings that scale and horsepower to process the immense amount of data required for things like model training. So cloud deployment makes sense where data is immense, processing needs are really high, but it's when you also need to consider performance and availability at the edge. I keep coming back to this, but this is what we solve for a lot of our problems with our database. And cloud-only deployments can present challenges for this. Do the users access the app on mobile devices? Do they go into areas without reliable internet? If they do, are you prepared to accept app downtime? And we start asking those kind of questions, people sort of go, well, no, app downtime is completely unacceptable. Well, then you really need to consider how you process your data. And this is where the edge computing architectures become a big part of the solution, where data and AI processing can happen, not just in the cloud, but also at the edge, including on device with synchronization throughout.
Yeah.
And lightweight LLMs are being introduced, it seems like every month, just for these sort of edge use cases. So having a database like Couchbase that can take advantage of data processing and AI models both in the cloud and at the edge is a benefit for for our customers. You get the cloud scale to handle the immense volumes of data for AI, as well as the edge capabilities for the immediacy to sort of make it most effective.
Yeah.
And that combination is really working for our customers.
Yeah, I mean, we're long past the days of the early edge, right, with Akamai, just to be sure that we could do good streaming of the games happening, right? Now we're in a whole new dynamic. Neil, you said it earlier, right? Like, you're not just spending money on tech for the sake of spending money on tech. So my guess is that same ethos probably plays into how you guys are thinking about AI too.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, we're pretty thoughtful about it. We are spending some money here and there on things that we know there's a value, right? There's some tools which are very helpful for lead generation, for lapsed customers or new customers, which we've seen a lot of success in, right? So, gone from the days of customer service reps or sales reps or whatever, plowing through a list of people and calling them and say, hey, you want to buy a ticket? To taking, really well culled data sources and having one or more AI models determine what their leads should be to have for somebody that is already an actual prospect for specific reason to then make that connection, either an automated or a non-automated way. That's useful for us, and we're using it, right? And we probably have been for a year and a half, 2 years now. There are a few other areas we're starting to experiment with, but we're also a little cautious. We are a little bit cautious by nature, but the reality is AI is, I'm sure you guys know, and everybody on this call as well, is it's 9 out of 10 people say I don't know what they're talking about. And so they're just like, oh, we should do AI. And then you ask them, what do you mean? And then it's silence. So the reality is the PR machine is several cycles ahead of the reality machine right now, except for small, parts of society and companies that really know what they're doing. It's kind of like, when the commercials for the cloud went out, in 2008 or whatever, and nobody had any idea what that mean. Although it just really meant the servers are in somebody else's room versus your room. But it was going to save the world, right?
Yeah.
It's going to be cheaper, which
So
it never was, and often still isn't, and so on. I mean, AI isn't, it's, in its broadest sense, it's a technology that is here to stay and is changing the world and will absolutely. But trying to figure out how it makes sense for you and for us is what we talk about all the time. And there are some real dangers you have to be careful about, and we talk about that quite a bit. And I think Mark mentioned this, like, AI is only as good as the models are only as good. Those large language models are only as good as the sources of data they're pulling them from. And they're just going to replicate the same garbage, or potentially worse if you're not careful. There's real issues with bias in a lot of models right now. If you're going to turn over all of your sales cycle and your sales funnel to an AI model, you better hope that when it talks to your customers, it's doing in a way that's appropriate. That means racial bias, and gender bias, and ethnic bias. It's not a sentient being that's going to figure out that the data it was given was wrong or was biased. And then if you don't have a data governance model of some sort that says these are the places I want these models to use, and these are the places I don't want them to use, you can pretty quickly push some really important IP or PII data out that you didn't plan to push out and get yourself in real trouble real fast. So the problem is if you just kind of sign up with a vendor who says, hey, it's $11,000 to sign up and it's $500 a user, per month, and it's the platinum plan, you're going to use AI. It's going to make your life a lot better. You're going to ask for trouble. So you got to ask a lot of questions. The technology is unbelievable. There's no doubt. And it is going to change, is changing our world. It's just, we're kind of on step 1 of 100 right now.
Yeah, 100%, Neil, right? We've done a few dinners with the CHRO for IBM, and she made the same point. They're not using AI for those bias reasons as they call through resumes, right? They're using it in other spots, but very thoughtfully making a decision. And I have to guess your deputy general counsel, right, is going to be thinking through those same issues of, okay, where do we play with this? Another interesting comment before I throw it to you, Mark, is we did a session, Neil, with the CTO for the 76ers. I don't know if you know Sasha Purich, great guy. If not, need to introduce you. And then Keith Cole, who's the chief digital officer for the Brooklyn Nets. But what Sasha said in that session is we've spent a lot of time thinking about AI as a tool. But at what point does AI become a team member, right? And you made the comment. It's like AI is not sentient, but that slight shift in perspective. Any thoughts on that, Neil, before I throw it over to Mark?
Yeah, I don't know when that answer. I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
coming. Right now you could argue that there are this platform that we are using right now is actually tuned to provide some responses back to customers as if it was a customer service rep. So in one way, it is kind of a team member, but nothing beyond that. And I'm very cautious about until we know what we're doing. We don't make it a teammate. And the reality is too is like, our job is baseball and popcorn and tickets, whatever. We're not curing cancer, so we don't. The use of AI, there's not a moral imperative to kind of go as fast as we can just because the technology is cool. And we could probably screw things up a lot faster than if we're not careful. And we're not big data either, right? We are as much data as we have. I wouldn't consider us big data. Now, AI in the healthcare system or government system or utilities or fintech, whatever, there's a lot more potential impact and risk there as well. We're just a lot smaller. So our ability to affect change and positive change with non-AI technology is pretty great. And so we're just taking it slow, right? But I know for a fact that, every year it'll be less slow. Next year will be a lot less so than this year. And probably 3 years from now, we'll be running as fast as we can.
Yeah, well, we'll leave that to your neighbors down the street at Cleveland Clinic, right? On really using AI to do that curing cancer thing.
Right.
But what I love about this setting, Mark, and again, thanks to Couchbase for making this possible, is, I mean, exec really is about being a team. It's about being in a safe space to have these kinds of conversations, right? Where you can talk to your peers, just like you do your peers across the other 29 teams, Neil, right? Like, we're all going as fast as we can, trying to make really good business decisions as technology leaders, like the guests that are watching now. And so having these conversations is just so incredibly valuable to get the wisdom of the crowd and the wisdom of 1,000 peers. So Mark, your thoughts on AI and where you're seeing it being used well across other industries in your customer base there.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go right off the cuff because I agree with 100% with what Neil said. AI is amazing. It's transformative, and it's only going to advance more, but it's not a panacea. It's all the rage, but it's not a panacea. You need current, clean, reliable data for solid, trustworthy AI. I've sort of become not by setting out to do so, but I've become an expert at picking out like YouTube videos that were produced by AI. And once you start to see the signs, you can pick them out. So, we're not quite there where AI is going to become like a trusted partner. But I think leveraging AI for, the agent concept, I think is brilliant. Leveraging AI to go do things, that would otherwise be time consuming and mundane. I think that's a great application. But I won't use AI as a creative crutch myself. I'm in marketing. I refuse to use AI. ChatGPT is not going to write my articles, for example.
Yep.
And I think also,
and I know we're going to share, actually, on that note, I know we're going to share in the follow-up to this one of your blog posts. So everybody now knows the blog post coming from Mark is not AI generated.
It is written 100%.
Sorry to interrupt you, buddy.
It's OI, organic intelligence. I like to call it. And some of the things are, so the accuracy, I think Neil was spot on. You need to make sure the data is in order, or else the AI is just going to be nonsense. That's where you get hallucinations. And then also implications around privacy in AI. If you're feeding, doing RAG, retrieval augmented generation, like feeding your proprietary information to a cloud model, you might be getting into some security and privacy bad areas there. But that's where edge computing can start to come in, coupled with these portable models. More and more LLMs are coming out that can be actually installed in an edge data center or even run on device. So we're seeing our customers start to address those kinds of challenges, I guess, through innovative uses of our database technology and the emerging AI tech that seems to be getting smaller and smaller. And with the small, some people would say, well, how could that be as accurate? And usually there is a trade-off. You're running a smaller model, you're probably going to lose a little bit of precision, but for the immediacy of making that offer in context to that user on their device right then, can sometimes override the need for 100% accuracy.
Yeah, I see you nodding your head, Neil. I'll just let you run with that one.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I don't think the intention of this conversation was to be about, the dangers of AI. Let's all be scared, right? Because it still is an incredible thing that is changing the world. But just one example I think of that we all have to be careful of is in new industries like this, the people prioritize top line revenue and customer generation before they do security often and resiliency. And so it's very easy to get freeware or cheapware that is AI generated. Like, oh, I want it. It's going to make my life better. It's going to make my company more money, et cetera. But you got to be careful. I had an example recently of, so all these Zoom has it, right? Zoom, Teams, whatever. There's a ton of tools now for meeting minutes and, auto-generated narration of virtual calls where you have the AI-enabled bot that logs in as well.
Yep.
And, we had somebody, it was actually not the Guardians, but it was related, provide some information that they probably shouldn't have provided, not knowing that it was being recorded. And that recording was then posted somewhere to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it was personal information. And it just made me realize, like, you got to be super careful, right? Like, just because the technology is great and it's easy to turn on the button that says, take notes for this meeting for me, AI bot thing.
Yep.
Well, everybody in that meeting better acknowledge that they're comfortable with that, because no one knows where that's going to go afterwards. And so this was one example of, it was actually a real bad example of it.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to keep balancing that world of pushing forward with the cool stuff and using it to generate important use cases, whether they're profitable revenue or something else. But also acknowledging that you got to learn along the way as to what the potential negative impacts are if it's not done right. And just like any new technology, it just happens to be that the ramp is a lot faster, and the potential positive and negative impacts are a lot faster and a lot steeper. And you got to ask a lot of questions. I ask questions constantly about AI because I'm not an expert, but I'm learning as fast as I can.
Well, and you make a great point, Neil, right? Which is, even though we may be talking about technology or we may be talking about AI, right? Like, we're still talking about business decisions and personal decisions, right? And to that end, right? Like, Chatham House rule is easy if we're hosting a dinner, somewhere nearby Progressive Field, and we're in a dinner setting for an executive council gathering, but Chatham House rule, when we're recording like this, responsibility sort of lands on me as a moderator to be sure that I ask questions that I know you're both comfortable having be recorded, such that if they are out there in the world, that you're comfortable with it, right? It's such an important point. And on that note, for folks that are watching, conversations like this one, and including, I think we've got yours with Chris Hans, Neil, from a few years back, or up at exec.org, right? Because good content is valuable. Good content comes from good people like each of you that are sharing your time with us, which we appreciate, for this Technology Leaders Roundtable. But maybe in these last few minutes that we have together, let's come to the leaders side of the equation. And we talked about it a bit earlier, Neil and Mark. I'd love to see what your customers are doing. But like, do you think, Neil, are the top 2 or 3 technology questions, whether it's data or AI or infrastructure at the field, or in your enterprise, that folks need to be thinking about as they're doing their 2025 planning like you are?
Ooh, tough question. So what are the top 2 or 3 things that technology leaders should be thinking about planning for 25? Is that essentially the
Yeah,
question?
basically, yeah, exactly. And in collaboration with the rest of the C-suite, like, what are the questions you should be asking the group? Yeah.
Well, I think some of them are no different than questions we've always asked in the technology space for a long time, right? What's the bottom line result, not just the top line result? I annoy people all the time by asking that question. Like, you're telling me that this technology is going to allow us to generate X sales, but what's the total cost of ownership? And after you go X sales minus Y expenses, what is the actual bottom line? Which generally, I get quizzical and slightly annoyed looks, like, why are you even asking me that question? I still think you have to ask that question, right? I still ask it all the time. If you're going to spend money on something that's technology related, is it going to meet the intended result you want it to meet, whether that's profits or something else.
Yeah.
I think there's kind of what we were just talking about, right? How can you dip your toe in the water or start crawling or walking on emerging or expanding technologies like AI in a way that you're learning and testing and learning, but not going too fast. That's faster than you're capable of doing. We're going to create some sort of issues. And then I just think in my industry, a lot of it is, whether it's in baseball or some other sport or some other entertainment aspect, or whether it's a specific venue that people pay money to come to, it's asking, what do they want? I don't think we do enough of it. Like what do customers want now? So when they walk into your basketball arena or baseball ballpark or football stadium or hockey arena or whatever, or soccer pitch, what is it that they are expecting when they walk in? And how are you going to meet those expectations? And I come from a retail background, not background, but for a long time I worked in retail, and we ask that question all the time. Are you asking yourselves what XYZ family of four who's traveling 30 miles to park at your game and come to your game, what do they want? And is the thing that you're going to spend money on and the project you're going to do, is it meeting that need, or is it just a pet project that you think is cool?
Yeah. We like to joke, right? What's the best way to know what a customer wants? Ask them.
Ask them, right? And we spend a lot of time on customer research and insights, and we work really hard to then apply our projects to what we've learned from that. But we're all human too. We also fall into the trap sometimes of, oh, I heard that thing on that, call. That was really cool. I want to do that too. And it becomes your own personal pet project. And we've got to separate ourselves from that sometimes. And so I think that's a question we all have to constantly ask, and that'll probably never change. As long as you have customers, you got to keep asking that question.
Yeah, no, that's great insights, Neil. Appreciate those. And Mark, what are you seeing? Like in those C-suite settings, right? As the executives are thinking about a technology decision, right? What are the key questions that you think folks should be asking, whatever industry they're in? Because I know several different industries are represented in our audience right now.
Sure. I mean, I'll be again leaning right into the database side of things for obvious reasons. And really, it is about kind of thinking ahead. And this is really from a perspective of what we have solved for customers in the past. And it's consider your data access patterns. Consider kind of into the future, what is it that you want to facilitate? There's probably going to be needs for like relational, transactional type of data processing. You're probably going to want to do analytical data processing. You're probably going to want to have apps that have, search capabilities, for example. You're probably going to want vector capabilities for AI. And there are bespoke databases for each one of these. And in fact, we go into a lot of customers that are saying, we're drowning in data sprawl. We have too much in our data stack to facilitate all of these different data access patterns. And that's what Couchbase, we really set out to try and solve that by offering everything that I just talked about in a single platform, including that mobile and edge support. And so it becomes a simplification, consolidation. It has implications on total cost of ownership when you can really kind of consolidate. So gone are the days of what we used to call polyglot persistence. Get the best tool for the job. Well, yes, but when you start to do that, you start to also inflate your data footprint. Because when you have separate databases, you also have redundant copies of that database for failover. And so when you start to think about different database technologies to facilitate different features in one application, true stories, all the time that happens, you can really make things more efficient and set yourself up better for the future by considering a single platform. And that also has implications on accuracy and traceability for AI. If you're feeding AI from a big mishmash of different data technologies, how are you going to trace that hallucination? It becomes a lot easier with a single kind of tech stack.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and it's probably stretching an analogy way too far, right? But like I'm sure when the baseball side of the thing there at the Guardians, Neil, right? The things that make for a good third baseman are not necessarily the same things that make for a great second baseman, right? And so
they're different tool sets. Yep.
Different tool sets that go in all the different spots. I'm going to close in a slightly different angle. So the exec membership, which I've talked about, right? Our team is all about career health and family. And we've gotten into a lot of really great conversations on technology leadership and what you both do as professionals leading the way there. But when you think about your one favorite health hack in a busy schedule, something you do in the morning or something you do in the evening to keep yourselves healthy. Mark, I'll start with you and we'll close with you, Neil.
I have changed to oat milk
All
in
right.
my coffee. So trying to lose a few lbs, and oat milk is also helps. I don't have the best digestion as I age, so definitely consider alternate nut milks as part of a health regimen, and you might be surprised.
I love it. I love it. Never heard this question come up in one of these roundtables. Neil, what's your health hack, my friend? I mean, you've got some great sports trainers all around you, so I suspect you've got some.
Yeah, I wish I could spend more time with them. I don't as much as I can. I think for me, it's standing up at work as much as possible, minimizing sitting down. So we're actually in a rental site right now because our administrative building's under renovation. As part of renovations. So the downside is I don't have my stand-up desk here, and I just haven't dealt with kind of adding one here. But I try to, when I'm working at work, I try to stand up more than sit down. So, and that, I've got really bad knees through years of sports, and I've got arthritis in my knees and so on. And standing up, just getting some blood flow in them since I've been doing that more in the past 5 years, it's helped a lot. I used to be kind of like a classic IT cubicle, office guy in my chair all the time. And standing up has, I'm not gonna say it's changed my life, but it's not that dramatic, but it's been helpful for sure.
Yeah, we've heard it across the spectrum, Neil, right? Like sitting is the new smoking, right? I mean, it really is major health attributes. On that note, I know actually all the folks that are attending, and we'll make sure you guys get it too. My colleague, Bob Johnston, who's our CEO, does a series of podcasts, and he actually has one coming out with his trainer, Joey Patina, on some other health hacks. So yeah, we like to look at the spectrum. We love to bring together conversations like this one. We really appreciate co-hosts like you there at Couchbase, Mark, for making these kinds of sessions possible. Of course, Neil, you're gracious to share your time and what I know is a very busy day with your insights. So oat milk, everybody, for their lattes this afternoon. Get up out of your seats and walk around and go to the ballpark at Progressive, right, Neil?
Absolutely. Come on down.
Nice.
We're a winning team, and hopefully we will be for quite a while.
Good luck against the Cubs tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Mark, Neil, thank you to all our guests. Thank you for being with us, and good luck with the rest of the season, Neil.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Neil.